Okay. Oops. So we are now live, and we can, I think, first call the meeting to order.
Sure, I'd like to call the meeting of the Amity Board of Education Communication Committee meeting to order at 5:42 p.m.
Great. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the November meeting. Those would have been on the second page of the agenda or the board packet.
Anyone have any edits to the meeting minutes?
I wasn't at that meeting.
Okay. And then do we have to make a motion to approve?
So we just need one person to make a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, thank you. All of those in favor, if you can just raise your hands clearly so that the camera can see you. And abstentions? Okie dokie. All right, the next item is public comment. We did not receive anybody requesting to attend the meeting for public comment, and we did not receive any correspondence. So there is none. And then that brings us to our topic or agenda item that we are discussing tonight, which is the discussion and possible action on any monthly communications. But I think that also overlaps a bit with anything that we're working on for the board corner of the website. So I don't know if anybody who is tasked with an assignment has either A, anything they want to share. I can set up a share screen, or B, if there are any questions or information that you're looking for to continue to draft your section of the board website.
So can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep. So I'm tasked with the achievements for the district. Achievement, yeah. And I wanted to just ask this group here if there are things that that you would like to see, or you think that would be good to highlight in an achievement corner besides the usual stuff like our SRP program was featured on the news a couple weeks ago, maybe over a month now or 2 months, and just other things that are that we can find in the Twitter website, on Twitter and other social media accounts. Thinking about actual achievement, I was thinking back to the some of the information that you shared last night, Jen. Would something like that, some of the positive highlights from that be something? But then just like to open it up to everybody to see if there are specific things that we think would be helpful. I have some notes that I wrote down in response to one of the public comments last night, just to sort of address any misconceptions about student achievement at the high school.
I mean, there's a section on my board presentation that I give for the budget, so you guys will see it in February, that highlights kind of sort of all, highlights a lot of our academic and arts and athletic achievements that we've had that don't get captured necessarily in the state types of reports. So the actual number of kids who participate in the SRP program, or the number of students in our pre-apprenticeship programs, the total number of kids who are taking AP classes, things like that. So I can probably send you some of those slides because we put together a fairly decent amount of information for that budget presentation, but it kind of gets buried in the budget presentation and it's not really out independently. The other thing that I think nobody ever knows that we have until they have a kid who's a senior and they start applying is our school profile. Because so it's something that gets submitted to the college when a student applies, and it's what the college uses to sort of weigh the value of one high school against the value of another high school when you have, millions of kids applying from all across the country to some of these colleges. So I can share that with you too, because again, I think it's something that has a lot of information in it that sort of speaks to the quality of a high school, the high school that we have. But again, nobody knows that it exists or that it has the information that it has literally until they have a senior.
Is
Do we
this
have-
the college? Oh, I'm sorry. Is this the college admission profile 2022, 2023 that has the CEEB code on it?
Yes, probably.
Okay. I sent it to you today, Carol.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Do we have information on like the types of colleges, like the colleges that our students, I know that the data yesterday showed that it looks like more kids are taking a gap year, but for the kids who apply, do we have data on like where they end up, like where they get accepted to, how many colleges they apply to, and how many
our graduation program always has the list of all the colleges the kids are going to. So we don't have it prepared for this year, but I certainly can get the list that we had from the class of 2022.
Is that's on page 3 of this, right? So
I think it is, but I don't know if it's as comprehensive. Like literally the graduation profile, I think lists it's everything. And I'm not 100% sure if the profile has every single one.
Well, it has from Albertus Magnus to Xavier. And the reason, so I've looked at this in the past and it's had Yale on it. And this year it doesn't have Yale. So my question was, who puts this together? And it doesn't say how many kids go to each college or university on here.
Yep. So our counseling department puts it together based on the student reports because we're required to do that. And we don't list the numbers necessarily. This has been, so it's been a contentious publication at times. Because for those students who did not get into their colleges of choice, it causes a little bit of, we'll say, frustration, anxiety, bad karma, all kinds of other stuff. So I think there used to be a time where we actually listed where every kid was going kind of individually, and this became sort of the happy medium where we talk about the schools kids are going to, but not specifically who or what.
Yeah, it used to be in the Trident.
Yes, it did.
Oh, like
so, yeah,
for
it
each
was
student.
Yeah.
It was a very public kind of thing, and research sort of said this is probably not the best way to deal with this. So over time, we kind of scaled it back a little bit.
So not the numbers,
just a list of colleges.
Just a list of colleges they go to, but not how many get
going to which one.
Yep.
Right. Okay.
Got it.
I mean, I think the other good information, again, while we're talking on colleges, is the data. And I think it's in one of my it might've been in the last superintendent's report, the one from December, the number of kids who got in through that automatic admissions program.
Yeah. It was.
Because that was a pretty significant number of kids who automatically qualified for entrance into our Connecticut college systems.
Okay.
I sent it to everyone. I already had it on my phone. So
thank you. And then
Thanks, Donna.
Other recognition. I know we usually have the student recognition at the beginning of our meetings, but any other sort of awards, SAT, like for SAT performance or?
Not usually for specific test performance. It's usually more holistic for the overall students. But we have, and again, we've never kind of published who gets those awards. It sometimes ends up in the paper if we do a quick press release. But let's see. So we've had our national merits. The finalists come out in the first week of February. Then we do the CAPS Award, the CABE Award, the CAS Award, and the SCASA Award. So we just finished CAPS. I think CABE might be next month. And then CAS and SCASA tend to be like more in the May, June timeframe.
Jen, I get the feeling that we should also, based on public comment, also include information that compares like our students' performance to other districts, like other districts or the state level or national level, so that we can sort of, highlight for everyone or illustrate for everyone sort of where we sit in terms of like academic rigor and like, the robustness of our school programs. So are there suggestions for like, are there existing sort of metrics that are already compared in that way that can be included? Because
not necessarily already, but I think we can again use some of the stuff that we've done very briefly with the DIRG data. I think, and again, this is, this would be a heavier lift for my staff because there aren't really the state doesn't like schools to necessarily compare themselves to other schools, right? Stand alone, do your own improvement. So anytime that we look for anything that requires us to compare ourselves within the DIRG, we have to go searching for all that information on our own, because the state doesn't just provide a filter, say, on all of their data repositories that lets you just filter out by DIRG B or DIRG A. So it tends to be a little more time consuming, but we do have, and you may be able to just do bullet blurbs of like where we rank in the DIRG with SAT math, with SAT English, with the accountability report. So we can definitely get that information to you. It will just take a little bit more time.
And the stuff the information that we got when we were having one of those special meetings about how Amity having to take the special ed kids from the sending elementary districts, being more cautious with them, was causing like our budgets and everything to be more blown up. I feel like this is information people ought to know and be presented as a positive thing. Like Amity is like, yes, we look different from the DIRG, but it's because we're doing this great thing and being able to, assess the kids and bring them back.
Oh, yeah, and I think highlighting and just piggybacking on that, Jenny, highlighting some of the great things about our special ed programs, like where, kids are sort of landing, how many, graduate with a diploma, things like that. So not just focusing on, not to exclude special education or other programs.
Yeah, and there was the thing in the superintendent's report I noticed about, I think, the transition academy that was, they made something that had something to do with soap, and someone on a vacation saw one of the things that they manufactured in Tennessee. So I feel like that's the kind of thing that you can put in that highlights the great things that make people proud, that doesn't have to be about this many people went to top colleges.
Yeah, and I will say in almost every one of every monthly superintendent's report, Mr. Brandt submits a couple of items that are related to our sales, Spartan Prep, or Transition Academy program. So you can almost always find something in those superintendent reports that, will dive into something that our special education programs and kids are doing. The other thing too is that almost always, well, not almost always, but typically we do have a blurb related to one of the unified programs, whichever one happens to be running at that time. So while that tends to focus a little more on social and skills and sports or theater, those are also usually captured somewhere in that superintendent's report.
Thank you. And are we thinking this is more like what's the sort of style we think for the board corner, like narrative or a mixture. I mean, it's hard if people are just looking at maybe like short paragraphs and then like bullets to support, bullets with examples. I don't know.
I think bullets and pictures will get you far farther than anything that says narrative, because people, I mean, all of the information we've talked about is someplace already, but like nobody really takes the time to look for it or read it very much. Yeah. I mean, and even I'm thinking our profile report, it is a meaty report. There are a lot of words on there. And it's great. And it really highlights everything that's awesome about Amity. But I do like your idea too, Carol, of if we have links to videos of kids doing cool things that maybe we have a way of kind of tagging some videos. I know today we had both local Channel 8, but also ABC News out of New York working on a feature for something that our kids are doing. So yeah, so I know we have, definitely some opportunities there.
The only thing about the video, sorry, the videos, are there like students who can't be videoed on or posted on?
Yeah, if they're connected with any one of the ones that we're doing for news broadcasts, we've already cleared them with the permissions.
I can just add a section that says cool things happening and Amity and tag the videos. But if you're gonna, so rule of thumb is people don't read, and it's bullets are easy, graphics easy. I worked with salespeople for a long time. They don't read. They'll even sent them something, it was bulleted and they still didn't read it, and they're still calling me about it. I'm like, okay, sure, so let's talk about it. But maybe they just like to talk, I don't know. But definitely bullets. And if you can just link in the source, that also is helpful too, for those who do like to read and want to know more.
To have a link back to the source.
Right.
I was just thinking to bucket, it might be helpful too to readers to like, to bucket some of the different highlights, right? So that if I'm like, I don't care about, I don't know, some area, some domain, I can like, my eyes would be drawn to something else and I can read about that. That might also help people, that might also increase like people actually reading some of it if it's sort of very clear what types of things are being highlighted. Sadir. Sadir asked about the mismatch between performance. 2019 in the patch article, which showed our numbers increased from 2019 in ELA and math.
For what?
It showed our numbers increased in terms of SAT performance.
I'll try to see if can you hear me in this noise?
Yeah.
Okay. The kids are like having a blast here. So what I remember, I have these graphs that I did actually a comparison. I think I might have even shared this with you, Jen, at some point. The ELA SAT scores and the math SAT scores. According to that data, Amity was the only school that actually had an increase with respect to 2019. So I was somewhat surprised when I saw yesterday that our numbers had fallen, and I couldn't rationalize why that was the case. Because
when we look at ELA and math at the district level, it's not just SAT scores. It also has to be our 7th and 8th grade Smarter Balanced for math and ELA. So it all gets combined together into one and like one total metric. And we did not perform as well at the middle school level in ELA and math. So it would be fair if I wrote my FAQ using the data on the high school, because I really wanted to talk about the high school. Yes, so if you use the SAT data, you're correct, but if you use the and that's the problem, is that there are so many sources
because
of
if you
data
mix
that we
up
can
all
pull
those things,
from.
then it's not clear what exactly you're actually reporting, right?
Yep.
Because
Yeah.
I was almost ready to give you guys a document, and I saw this yesterday, and I'm like, okay, well, what am I going to be doing? Like, because these numbers don't tally with. Okay, good. Okay, great. So I'll mute myself again, but let you guys continue. Yeah.
Okay.
So this was again in the spirit of like, showing the achievements of the school, etc. as well. Like, yeah. And the other thing is, we did talk about this participation in AP scores, AP tests as an important reason why our school dropped to 28, because that was like, in October, I had done this analysis where we looked at where was the only place where we were doing poorly. Was actually the most definitive place was in the percentage of people taking SAT scores. And you mentioned that was because in many schools, they ask people to do it, and we don't do that. And but would that be even reasonable to ask the students to do that? Like, would people not push back?
I feel like people might then not take the
there
AP class.
are pros and cons to it. Mrs. LaPlante is absolutely right. The number of colleges that are accepting AP credits at this point has dropped off precipitously. And for a lot of our seniors who are going on to many of those prestigious colleges that are listed on our profile report, they just don't take them. So our kids, by the time it's May, don't see the purpose in spending the money for the exam or the stress of taking it. We could, force their hand and say you have to, but then it goes to Carol's point that when you start to say you have to, we may become on the hook for paying for them. And if you figure at, whatever an AP test is, like, is it like what, $100? It's more than that even, right?
It is more than that. Yeah.
And we would administer 943 of them. We're talking about we're talking about a huge chunk of budget that we would have to provide to mandate the AP test. And I do think that in some schools, I mean, again, it's a cultural thing too. Over time, our students have become culturally okay with not taking the AP test. They get like sort of the relaxing, non-anxiety provoking, benefits. I think there are schools where a lot of the kids, still continue to, like, for whatever reason, have that cultural like competitiveness where they take their AP exam. And I can pull the exact numbers from enrollment in AP tests last year and then how many kids actually took AP tests. But I'm guessing that we only test about 80% of our students to begin with. And I think that kind of is reflective, because I think if you look, like, about 80% of our students pass the AP test. Well, that's because every kid who takes it tends to pass. We get very few 1s and 2s, but just not every kid takes it.
Have you seen, has there been a drop off or a change in the number of students or percentage of students who take AP courses?
It's been pretty consistent from at least the 4 years that I've been doing these budget presentations, where I can see the number from one year to the next. It's been relatively consistent. I think we had a slight increase in like 1920, but it's more a factor of when AP tries to make money and splits all these courses into A, B, and B, C, and then we start offering all of those, then sometimes we get a little bit more participation because kids have more choices. But overall, I think the number has stayed relatively flat.
Yeah, I looked at a couple, like, just spot and different in our DIRG and outside of our DIRG from the ed site. And I didn't spend a lot of time, and I didn't look at the percentage, but from the few that I looked at, we're not the only district who's had more absenteeism or.
Oh, yeah, no, that's like across the board everywhere. So,
right.
Yeah. And wait, I was just going to say so. Oh, the other thing that's interesting about AP is we actually permit, well, anybody can take AP, but it's pretty typical in our school for sophomores to start taking AP tests. And any sophomore taking an AP test isn't even counted in any of the metrics, because they only look at juniors and seniors. So our whole group of sophomores who start taking AP US history and some of the AP sciences don't even factor into the AP count. So, and all of those kids usually do take the AP test. So I think it skews our numbers to a participation rate that's even lower at times.
I had a question about that last night, Jen. Is the denominator for that AP test participation those who take the test or those who are eligible to take the test?
So the denominator is those who are eligible. So any kid who's enrolled in an AP test.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I don't know. I can't remember what you said you found, Donna, but I suspect that we would see the same thing. I'm going to clap too, Jenny. I suspect that we'll see the same thing happen at other schools that are sort of similar in terms of like demographics and the number of students participating in AP exams, because the reality is they're all applying. If they're applying to these like top tier schools, right? And the schools, I imagine the schools are like, we're losing a lot of tuition. Then we'll see the same thing happen at other schools that are sort of comparable to us.
I've looked a little bit at the DERG numbers and they vary to school. It's not consistent.
We looked at
so I think there is something else at play there that, and again, I don't know if it's just an expectation that's been established.
So I noticed that
policy.
Farmington, Windsor, South Windsor, all of these places have much higher numbers. And
really?
Yeah, and so that's how their numbers go up. Even though I think on other metrics of performance we do fine. Schools like South Windsor, for whatever reason, like I think a lot of new people have come into these communities. These are like extremely excited about education, and things like that. And so these kids are doing differently than some of our more established districts where people are, the new millennials are in a different mindset in terms of the trade-off between, etc. So I don't know all the theories behind it, but I noticed that the numbers are quite different. And that's why I was asking Jan about why are our numbers different? Why has this drop off been? And so there's, but yeah, it also seems strange that the sophomores who take this are not counted, even though they are included in the denominator. That seems like a very strange thing. Who does the reporting on these numbers though?
So these would be, I mean, the AP will actually, because we don't provide the numbers to these people. So I'm assuming they get the information from AP itself. And, and I think they accurately reflect both our enrollment in an AP class and the number of kids who end up taking the AP exams, because it's all tied back to our school identifier. But again, the metrics that both the two Newsweek and Niche use is they only look at 11th and 12th grade students. And one of them may only look at seniors. So it's really deceptive because it doesn't paint the whole picture of every single kid who's in.
So if students are taking it early because they are hardworking kids, you get penalized, and a more successful school district then gets penalized. But this is the same issue that I was also asking yesterday about the difference between the regular all students versus special ed students, because there is more scope for better performance, right, if the students are really good, whereas there are potential challenges for some of the special ed students to do well. And so this inequality might appear to be more a significant, this thing where if generally students are not performing well. So I'm going to, I don't know how easy or difficult it would be for you to look at the data, but at least I'm tempted to, look at it. And again, part of the problem is you don't want to sound like we are making a lot of excuses for our numbers, right? At the same time, we don't want to be penalized for successful performance as well. So it's like, my thing is, if students do really well, and then that is the reason we look back, at least it's useful for people to know that our best students are doing well. And that's one of the reasons why we might be having this gap compared to schools that don't perform. So maybe at least if we can look at some of the DRG A and B districts and find if this gap is higher than the state for these schools, as opposed to schools at the lower tier, if that is what is driving it, that might be a useful point of information to provide.
Yeah, I am going to look at that because I actually suspect that, and I could be wrong, but I'm going to guess that some of our alliance districts which are our most challenged districts also have gaps. So I don't know, but I'll double check, but I just have a suspicion that Hartford, Bridgeport, New Britain, they probably have performance gaps between their high achieving students and
Yes.
their low achieving
But
students.
the point with the gaps is that their gaps might be like, absolute level gaps. It's not relative gaps. Right? Like,
Their gaps may be what, Sudhir?
Absolutely. Like, meaning the threshold, the level is low for both.
Yep. Yes,
Right?
it's entirely
And-
possible.
Right. And our challenge is like, the level might be higher for the all, but like, it's a lot harder to, again, I don't know I haven't looked at this course. I'm just giving this conjecture, but I don't know, like, meaning it might be harder to improve performance of the special ed students than it is of the students who are performing. And let's take a look at the data. I don't want to conjecture and go too far ahead of myself on this number until we look at the data. Yeah.
Well, and Dr. Sudhir, I'm going to give you a report that I can't say every single person on this Zoom call will be interested in, but it's actually the state's document on how every single one of those metrics on the next generation accountability report is calculated. So I will give that to you because I know that you will take that in gleefully and absorb it all, but I will pass that on at some point so that you can, because it may address some of those calculations there, even in that explanation.
Okay, I will stop there and but those were
They
the
just
two,
give you a homework assignment. And now you're like, oh, I better not talk anymore.
no. I meant I want the others to be able to. These were the two questions I had that I wanted to check in before I wrote some of the documents that I was planning to write. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
All right, and so we talked about the highlights. Does anyone else have anything to share or to discuss related to unexpended funds or diversity, equity, and inclusion, the other sort of topic areas that we were going to write on?
I mean, I can briefly at least give the committee an update on what Mr. Davis and I have been drafting for this month's report. If you just give me a second, I just have to pull it up, so I'm not really looking at anybody. So we will have hopefully an introduction, a paragraph on the application of the unexpended funds, just highlighting, the board's vote and then sort of what this has in terms of an impact on the town's allocation payments. I used some of Mr. Davis's comments that he made in the chair's report regarding kind of communicating educational concerns and using the chain of command. And I pulled a little bit from that board policy to just kind of reiterate the process of when a parent has a concern over something that happens that's an educational matter related to their kid in a classroom, kind of the appropriate pathway that they follow for actually having conversations, instead of just coming and having 3-minute public comment that never resolves anything for that person. We did a brief just introduction about the budget for 23-24, the fact that it was presented to AFC, and then when the town finance committee presentations would happen with encouraging feedback from citizens at those town meetings before the board adopts it. I did a little, and then I tried to pull some of the highlights from the superintendent's report. So I pulled the highlight on the BOE boutique, which was the school's thrift store, the upcoming virtual keynote, which those, again, are replacing the parent universities. And that information just went out to our communities, but we'll put it in the papers. The scholarship resources that are available for the seniors, and just a reminder, not just to them, but to their families, they need to go to the counseling office to look for those. And then I did put a blurb in about the soap lift that Dr. Turner had mentioned earlier. So I just sent it to Mr. Davis today, so I'm sure he'll take a look at it and then do his edits and what he does to kind of polish it up. But that's sort of where we are right now. The DEI, it's the same people who are beating us with, what is it, beating a dead horse with a stick? It's, you know, we're not getting any different information. And I think kind of much like the topic around what is a controversial issue, what somebody considers DEI curriculum, I think is a personal interpretation. And I don't know that we're ever going to get resolution when they say we're teaching it and we say we're not.
So I'm glad to hear. I was like thinking a lot about that after hearing that comment and wondering how, and maybe I'm like, maybe you're right, like there's no way around it, but wondering how we can sort of distinguish curriculum, like even defining like what is curriculum, right? Versus, you know, our DEI initiatives that we have set forth. So I don't know, or where that would go to sort of define, here's what curriculum is. And, you know, I don't know. I had a hard time. I felt the need to sort of provide, I don't know, some type of response to sort of distinguish those two things.
It is really frustrating when you know that it's certainly a misinterpretation or just a misunderstanding or just not having enough knowledge in education to know the difference. And wanting to be able to give that distinction. However, I don't know that everybody is listening. As much as we try to explain it, I don't know if people are willing and able to understand what we're saying and accept it and believe it.
The people who are saying this have no intent to understand. Like, you know, they know what they are talking about. They are the ones who supply us Fraser University videos, which are, you know, nonsensical, right? And they are built with an agenda. They're sending us to us and saying, you are the uneducated folks, you should be reading up on this. We have all read a lot about this stuff. But the problem that I view is, are we missing people in the middle? And in some sense, I think a lot of what Carol is saying, I don't think the ones who are coming and talking to us are the people who we need to convert. Are there people in the middle who may be persuadable, right? Like, you know, who may want to hear what is this version, because they might be thinking, oh, we don't know, therefore let's assume the worst, rather than they are not persuadable. So I think that's kind of the trade-off. Would our communications help with people in the middle? We're never going to persuade those folks who are, I don't think it is lack of understanding, or they are motivated to believe what they believe. Yeah.
I agree, and I feel that it's really important that we have an answer out there. So someone who hasn't had the time, or like Amy says, isn't in education and doesn't know what these sorts of considerations are, has an answer that sounds reasonable, and they say, oh, okay, that's what this is. It isn't as scary as I sometimes feel it looks like on the internet.
But an answer to what? Because their accusation is we're teaching CRT in our curriculum. And I think Mr. Davis has very unequivocally said, no, we are not. There is no DEI curriculum, and there is no CRT in our instruction. And it's not even a reasonable explanation. It's a flat out denial that, you know, so I guess I don't know what,
right. So I think Carol's point, and the way I think Jenny already, is writing something about this as well. So
yeah, I do.
But I think the point is to say, redefine the questions, not in their terms, because you can never talk on their terms, right? I think we have to talk on what the school is thinking about and how we are thinking about, so that the people in the middle who are reasonable and want to understand get our viewpoint in a way that is digestible and understandable. That, I think, should be our goal. I don't think we are going to be ever able to respond if you say, well, this is our definition of DEI. No, this is not your, this is what somebody has told us is DEI. We are never going to be able to write in that terms. I think we ask the question ourselves and then answer it in the way we've been doing through these FAQs and other stuff. And that's the best I think we can do. So
I was working on it, and it's like, why do we ask these questions and why do we pursue these issues, sort of thing. And the portrait of a graduate, like talking about these are the community values, these are the things that we want to produce in the student. And all of these things have to do with understanding diverse perspectives, being able to work with other people, understanding your audience, things like that. So I feel as though we can make an argument in terms of why we're looking at these things, why we're trying to include books that make everyone at Amity see themselves, so that everyone at Amity can be this portrait of the graduate who has the ability to work with all these different people in these ways. So I'm thinking that that is an argument from our community's values and makes it clear that it's homegrown, it's us, it's these families and what everyone here wants to see.
And
not some scary outside thing.
Right. And how it prepares our kids for a world,
Absolutely,
which is much more diverse. And they may not like the word global citizen. Maybe we take away those trigger words in how we say things, but ultimately our kids have to operate in the world, and preparation like this is important, and that's what we are preparing those kids. So restate it in our terms and then write it, I think, is the best we can do. I think.
I completely support what you're saying. But to Jen's point, Jen, you know what, you're right. As far as the people who are coming, they're coming in angry and there's no dissuading them. They're not asking the question. It's not as if they're open-minded and asking the question and wanting to know what is going on. It's like, oh, I heard this and can you please tell me more? It's very accusatory and from a very angry point. And the only hope I have is that the numbers are coming down of the angry people coming. Maybe it's because it's the winter. I don't know.
I'm sure at the budget time we'll see all of them.
I'm sure it will change again.
Yeah.
But it's difficult to respond to statements because that's what they are. They're statements. It's much easier to respond to questions because questions at least provide us an opportunity to craft or seek an answer.
Right. I leave the meetings wondering, I'm like, what is the ask? I mean, tell me what your ask is, because we're trying to help you understand what we're trying to help you see it the way you see it.
For not having a DEI initiative.
That's true.
I think, and honestly, I don't remember if it was Carol or somebody at one of the meetings said, simplistically, if we could just change the name and not call it DEI, then maybe they wouldn't equate it with CRT. But they want DEI, that terminology, eliminated from all things education. But I think under the wrong pretenses, because I don't believe that they would say, yep, racism, anti-Semitism, that's fine at Amity. I don't think they would say that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I
think it's hard. I think it's hard sometimes to think about how intentional we have to be as individuals, as school districts, school teachers, right? To make sure that all that you described doesn't happen, right? And this is exactly why we have these initiatives, right? Because if we're not intentional, then we're in my mind, we're okay with whatever happens. So
or you're just hoping for the best. You're hoping for the best without actually trying to plan for the
right.
best.
But that doesn't work. Hoping for the best doesn't work.
No,
I wish it did.
Yes, hope's not a strategy.
They don't really want the district working towards one Amity. They want us working towards, okay, handle discipline problems in a punitive manner. They are not trying to be proactive. They want punishment for the students who misbehave.
It's basically, but that is an excuse for not doing anything, right?
And it doesn't teach anything.
No, but I don't know. But to me, it is a strategy to suggest don't do anything, and any action, we can select the people who cross this threshold by a huge manner that requires punitive action. But every other level of issues, you deal with it and you don't talk about it. And then in reverse, they also tell you that, look, it is the only reason why this is an issue, right? Racism or all is because you talk about it. If we didn't talk about it, our kids would be so innocent and there would be no problems at all, right? Basically, this is what they keep telling you, and meaning, and we know that that's not, yeah. As you said, hope is not a strategy, and that's what they're basically telling you to do, which is a good way of saying don't do anything.
Right.
Jenny?
Another one is, failing to plan is planning to fail. But, something else is that I think we need to remind the community when this is, high school is a stepping stone. And when our kids leave, they're going out into the world where, by the way, every organization has a DEI statement. Colleges, universities have entire departments dedicated. So I'm not sure where this is coming from, other than being disruptive in a board meeting.
Do you think it's, Jenny, do you, and you may already have this in your write-up, but do you think it's, do you all think it's helpful to make connections to research that shows, I know this is getting but research that shows the benefit of having an equity lens, right? In no matter what sort of sphere you're working in, right? Having an equity lens, the benefits of diversity, right? You come up with you solve problems better, you come up with, better solutions. It's just better for society.
Yeah, I was writing something like that in the going through the portrait of the graduate thing, the problem solving thing, the value of learning to look at problems from different perspectives lets you ask better questions. And I started to feel like I was starting to perhaps get too complex. I myself, I would love to go through and put down the research and everything, but I suspect Jen's face is telling us, but no one would want
nobody's
to
going to
know.
read it, but it wouldn't be it wouldn't be awful to link people. But again, we start to walk a very sort of fraught line, because depending on where that research is coming from, then it starts to take on.
Yeah.
And I certainly have seen it. There is definitely research out there that is incredibly biased in all kinds of different ways, and without kind of a level of expertise around what is going to be sort of a more neutral line.
What's a reputable?
I would be very loath to putting up research. If you can't convince people on COVID and diseases, you're not going to convince people on. So they will all present to us their own research. So I think we are opening a Pandora's box when we start reporting on research, because we will immediately get the counter research.
I think what you can connect back to, and I don't know how much they have in their statements, but are the State Board of Education's and the CSDE's position statements around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because if we are agents of that state as a board, connect back to them, because then we're operating as agents of the state and what their beliefs are.
Okay.
I think that would be the best strategy, because you don't want to
next to state requirements.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you want to still focus on Amity, and we are a public school, and we do have these beliefs, but I think if you start going down that rabbit hole, it could be a problem.
I think connecting with state stuff is really key. This is not just us, but
and again, not everybody believes us when we say, oh, that's part of what we have to do as the state requires.
Link that in, just link it in.
But Jen,
website.
A question that would be really helpful to me while I'm working on this thing. What focus groups went out into the community? Who were you talking to? If I can define who in the community's values we queried, can I say business people?
So there's an entire portrait of the graduate section of the website that you could probably lift from, where we talk about the process where we
Okay.
got the information from. If you don't find enough there and then certainly cycle back around to me, but there's.
Okay, yeah, I looked at the page. I saw the thing and a summary. I didn't go clicking for other things because
Yeah, so at the bottom, there's kind of like a set of little tabs, and I'm pretty sure one of those tabs talks about the process and how we developed it.
Okay, I'll make a note.
Okay, so it's 6:30, so we're right at time. Does anyone have any final questions or suggestions?
Did you all talk about what the finance committees, how they communicate budget information?
We did not get to that homework assignment.
Okay, perhaps we could email it to you as a way of making that not be delayed.
Sure.
Okay.
You know, this is just an off question. And, you know, we talked about the restore that was being done. I can't remember the name that was done in December off the top of my head. Jen, you mentioned it.
Our professional development?
No, that you know, at Amity that they
the thrift store. Yeah.
Thrift store. Okay.
Yep.
You know, what about the bees? You know, we have the bees and there's honey and there's a beehive. And is there anything like, you know, cool things people don't know about?
I didn't know that until this week. My friend told me. I was like, yeah, beehives and honey.
It was in a board packet last year. I'm like,
really?
Let's talk about the bees. Let's talk about the honey.
I love that.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things and they happen all the time. And this community it's funny. The community is so acclimated to learning opportunities that our kids have that nobody thinks that they're amazing. And so like weird stuff happens and Mr. Hauser, Mr. Picaro, and I tend to notice it because we're like newer. And so like stuff happens and we're like, that's weird. But like the other day, and this is a perfect example, Mr. Hauser's outside doing bus drop off and this little group of people comes traipsing up and he's like, can I help you? What are you here for? And it turned out to be a professor from Yale who brought the entire Yale acting class, who's putting on a production of Macbeth, to come talk to our advanced acting class and all our 11th graders who are reading Macbeth. And like, we're like, and so the college kids engaged our kids just about how you perform and act and do Shakespeare and Macbeth and the interpretation of the whole play. And we're like, and he's like, nobody told me this was happening. He's like, this, because everybody thinks it's so normal. And like, it's not normal. Like people don't understand. You just don't get Yale's professors and their acting troupe walking into your school to do a 2-hour presentation in the Black Box Theater.
Yeah.
So part of our problem that we've had, even like with the videographer, is people don't tell people stuff is going on because they think it's just a normal part of the school day.
Or a normal
Next, you're
part
going
of
to
any
tell us
school day.
Eric Clapton came.
So it takes effort to figure out the cool stuff because nobody thinks that it's abnormal or cool. They just think it's just what happens in high school. It's
not.
It's a fun fact about Amity. and so I'm always kind of bugging people. I'm like, you just have to call our Alan, the video guy. I'm like, just tell him to come and film what you think is a normal thing because it's not normal. Our culinary classes are so high quality. Our auto shop is amazing. And everybody's like, these are just the classes. I'm like, no, this is not normal.
My daughter took culinary. She took advanced culinary as a sophomore. She was coming home with meals. Like for my
Chef Hans does like mind-blowing stuff. Yes. It's
like, you could have like a mock beat Bobby Flay.
I'll come sit in culinary and learn some things.
So that would be interesting, Jen. What if you invited some of the board members to come in and see some of the classes? Just a suggestion, to see some of the things, because, we know the classes are there, but unless you have students who are taking them, wouldn't it be interesting to know, hey, are our bees going to get the new bee vaccine? That's there. I'm sure maybe I shouldn't bring that up because maybe that's controversial as well, that there's a bee vaccine and we're going to give it to our bees so that they can, be immune to the bee diseases.
So, yeah, we can definitely, and again, we can work on something like that at some point. I don't see why not, but,
I mean, what about, who is Seth Davis?
So Mr. Davis is our instructional coach. He's our newest instructional coach for technology. So we had one coach, Miss Lassen. We have so much technology in the district, we needed to have two. So he has some specific tasks related to technology. Probably the biggest one is the website rebuild and then doing our social media. But he's also our point person for a whole bunch of other things: Power School, scheduling, grading, our Raptor emergency management system. He's got a long list of other things that he's assisting on.
I mean, this may sound like a strange question. People take pictures of everything on social media, but even the culinary, like my kids take pictures of meals that we make, like, oh, this is beautiful. I'm like, you guys are so weird sometimes. But posting that, and you said even the auto body, or isn't there like design? There's like, I was just looking through it just because I have a sophomore and all the courses that are available, architecture.
Yep. So I think that's really what we need to use our videographer for, because he really because he does nice little 2-minute videos of the classes and the kids. So it's something that we just have to be deliberate and purposeful in having him come in and do that.
Is there anyone who does any type of communication, who oversees everything within the district?
No.
That's a missed opportunity to just kind of pull everything together and actually have a plan. Social media.
Bigger, there are districts that hire, PR consultants or a PR specialist. But it has never been something that, frankly, as much as I know that it's harmful for us, it's not worth the money that it would cost in terms of a teacher, a para, or any of the other support staff that we have right now to help run the district.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I did a little looking over the weekend, and there are districts who hire communications directors.
Oh, yeah.
And that is their job, to pull together the strategy and marketing plans. There are actually open positions right now in many of the school districts that are looking for someone to pull together the marketing.
There's also tons of open teaching positions as well.
Well,
and I think if we're going to hire, it's going to be a teacher and not a communications specialist. But I also have to go, I have to pick up my daughter. So not to cut you off, because I think it's an important idea, and to get all the positive information out. I do think that's a positive idea too, but I think that's a conversation for a whole meeting.
Yeah.
It is a conversation for a whole meeting. But the other thing is that at least you can hire marketing people, unlike teachers, where you can't find them.
Yeah, that's true.
And that also helps with the school's image. It helps retain teachers. It helps also recruit teachers, because where do you want to work? You want to work somewhere that has something to offer you, not just a job, somewhere you're proud to go, and somewhere that has, some really cool things that are going on within the district, and somewhere that is just maybe small, but can also pull together a team and involve your community, and everyone's proud.
So I want to be respectful of Amy's need to leave, and once she does, we won't have a quorum anymore. So Madam Chair, if you would like to perhaps use your powers to adjourn the meeting.
Sure. I'd like to adjourn the meeting. I guess I need to make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 6:40.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks very much, everyone. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.